Hi everyone and welcome back to the Shine podcast. I'm Stefan.
And I'm Dani. So today we're unpacking gender equality and social cohesion, two values the EU strongly supports. Explore how these deeply ingrained gender stereotypes impact us all, individuals, communities, and whole society.
That's about right.
And crucially, what we can actually do about it. What steps can foster stronger, more cohesive communities?
That's the plan. We'll start by getting clear on some key terms. Then we'll dig into the profound impact these stereotypes have, and finally look at how we can shift from just being aware to taking real action.
Okay, so first up, definitions. When we talk about gender equality, what we are really saying, essentially, according to the EU Gender Equality Strategy, it means that women and men, in all their diversity, are free to pursue their chosen path in life, have equal opportunities to thrive, and can equally participate in and lead our European society.
So it's really about fairness and freedom. These are the key words I'm meaning.
Exactly. And to make that a reality, we need more than just individual fairness or freedom. We need societies that actually support it. That's where social cohesion comes in. And it's not just a feel-good concept, it's actually a commitment in EU law. Article 3 of the Treaty on the European Union says the EU shall promote social cohesion and solidarity among member states.
Social cohesion, yeah. That's about the trust, the solidarity that holds us together, making sure everyone feels like they belong, they're part of the community, even when we have differences.
But a huge barrier to that sense of belonging is how we prejudge people. Which brings us straight to gender stereotypes. This set of simplistic catch-all ideas of what men and women should be like, physically and mentally, and of what they're actually expected to do. And for those who exist outside that binary, the stereotype is often that they simply don't exist or that their identity isn't valid.
We know the old cliches. Boys don't cry, women belong in the kitchen, and for non-binary people, erasure is just as damaging as any prescribed role.
And it's pretty striking how these everyday biases can undermine equality sometimes even before any law or policy even gets looked at. And here is something that really underscores the seriousness. The UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights sees wrongful gender stereotyping as a pervasive human rights violation, but one that is often overlooked.
Pervasive human rights violation. I mean, those are incredibly charged words. Why that strong language?
Well, think about it. When these stereotypes dictate your job prospects, or what society expects your life priorities to be, or even just how you're allowed to express yourself, they're fundamentally taking away your autonomy, right? They're putting you in a box before you even get a chance to figure out who you are and what you want.
That makes sense. Yeah. So, do you have any specific examples in mind? How do these gender expectations actually play out in people's lives?
Absolutely. For women, a big one is being judged on appearance or perceived emotional state, even in professional settings where it should be relevant. There is the famous case of Ann Hopkins at PricewaterhouseCoopers. She was a senior manager, applied for partnership in 1980. A stellar performer, brought in millions, but despite her performance, she was denied. The reviewers literally told her she needed to, quote, walk, talk, and dress more femininely. They suggested she wear makeup and smile more to improve her chances. Can you imagine?
Seriously.
Her case went all the way to the US Supreme Court, and in 1989, the court ruled that relying on those stereotypes broke federal law, landmark's decision.
Definitely, but it makes you wonder how many less dramatic or just less visible versions of that still happen every day, quietly undermining careers. What other kinds of stereotypes impact women?
Well, there is the persistent idea that women are emotionally volatile or dramatic. This stereotype basically assumes women can always make rational, autonomous decisions reliably, like they're driven by moods, not logic.
Yeah, the hysterical woman trope, basically.
Pretty much. And you see it play out when, say, a manager dismisses a woman's idea because of she's being too emotional, or even more concerning when a doctor downplays a woman's physical symptoms.
It's just hormones or it's just all in your head.
Exactly that. And then there is another layer, the unspoken expectation in many societies, maybe some cultural or religious communities more strongly, that women should keep their romantic or sexual lives very limited for, purity.
Yes, the classic double standard. Still alive and well?
It really is, and the costs are hidden, sometimes insidious. It can mean women feel shame or seen as promiscuous just for seeking contraception, for taking control of their own reproductive health.
That's incredibly damaging.
Oh yeah, especially for young women when they are just starting to explore their sexuality, the shame can be paralyzing. It might stop them from getting accurate information, make them fear judgment, and tragically can increase risks like unintended pregnancies or untreated health problems because they're afraid to seek help. Plus, this kind of control over bodily autonomy is a root cause of gender-based violence.
Can we unpack that for a second? How does that stereotype directly connect to violence?
Absolutely. When you have an ideology that says a woman's value is tied to her purity or adherence to a specific role, it creates a justification for controlling her. If she steps outside that role by saying no to a man, by dressing in a certain way, by being assertive, she's seen as transgressing. That's where street harassment, intimidation, coercion, or even physical violence can emerge as a punishment or a tool to enforce those rigid norms and maintain power. It's not just about individual acts, it's about the culture that enables them.
So the dominant gender ideology can be seen as a system of control, with violence being the most extreme enforcement mechanism of that system, right? A stark reminder of real-world harms. But what about men? Are they constrained by gender expectations or?
Absolutely. Men feel the squeeze too, it's just in a different way. Men are often told to man up, to hide their feelings, as if emotional vulnerability is irrelevant. And that pressure isn't harmless. Recent studies report a steady rise in loneliness and isolation among men, driven in part by these outdated expectations.
And loneliness itself is a huge risk factor for serious mental and physical health problems.
Yep, that link to public health is critical.
And, thinking about this, there is a real symmetry here in how these stereotypes backfire. Take the stereotype that women are natural caregivers or that their primary role is motherhood, right? That obviously sidelines women who choose not to have children for whatever reason. Maybe a demanding career that is their true calling, maybe just personal choice. Society might see them as, I don't know, unfulfilled or unhappy.
As if their life isn't complete without that specific role.
Exactly. But now flip that same stereotype. It also sidelines men who genuinely want to be deeply involved, hands on that. They might have skepticism or something like asking for parental leave or struggle or custody. This situation became caregiving because caregiving is still implicitly branded as a woman's work.
Exactly. So it's the exact same stereotype creating barriers for both men and women.
Just flipped.
True. And at the same time, non binary individuals often face erasure and hostility for simply existing outside this binary.
Right. The system has no box for them. So the struggle isn't just being in the wrong box, but fighting to be seen as a legitimate role. That means daily battles, often pronounced access to appropriate healthcare or even just using a public restroom without fear.
Exactly. For non binary people, the core stereotype is that their identity is a phase, a trend, or not real. That denial is one's very sense of self, is a unique and deeply damaging form of pressure.
And it seems clear that all these individual impacts were discussed. Courtroom battles, medical dismissal, male loneliness, shaming childless women, and child prioritizing men there don't just hurt individuals, they add up. They contribute directly to, well, fracturing society, eroding that social cohesion we talked about, right?
In many ways, when people are constantly being pushed into these narrow boxes, it makes it harder for everyone to feel like they truly belong, doesn't it? A major impact is the eroding of trust in our core institutions. Think about it. If courts or schools or hospitals operate on stereotypes, maybe dismissing a woman's claims because she seems too emotional, or assuming boys are naturally better at math and guiding them that way, people start to lose faith that they'll get a fair shake.
Right. If you don't trust the system to see you, why would you engage with it?
Precisely. And the results are tangible. Young girls might shy away from STEM clubs because they've heard that they're not for girls, and boys might skip art classes for fear of being mocked. Non-binary youth might feel completely unseen by the system. People might avoid doctors they don't trust or end up not trusting any doctors in general. Victims, especially of gender-based violence, might not report crimes. This breakdown of trust in fundamental institutions is a direct hit to social cohesion. It pulls people apart.
And then there's the mental health angle we touched.
Alright, this deepens the crisis. You have these rigid norms about how emotions should be handled, men bottling things up, women being overly pathologized for expressing similar feelings. These aren't just individual problems.
Right, it breaks down that feeling of we're all in this together, and that weakens the community ability to support each other, especially when times get rough. But then the problems are clear, the impacts are wide-ranging, but what about the solutions? How do we turn this awareness into tangible action?
Well, starting simple, a fundamental step for everyone is just challenging stereotypes when you encounter them day to day, right? Like if you hear someone says boys don't cry, ask why not? Or call out a joke that relies on a sexist trope. It feels small, but those interruptions matter. Also, actively amplify different voices. Share stories or posts from women leaders who you admire or people who defy gendered expectations and live their lives authentically.
Yes, a pixel by pixel change of the bigger picture. The first step is actively challenging harm of gender norms, roles, relations, and power imbalances.
And be critical. consumers of media, yeah? Deconstruct the biases you see in ads, movies, TV shows, even artificial intelligence. Now ask, who is this for? Who is being left out? What assumptions are being made?
Okay, so those are the things everyone can do. What about specific strategies for young people wanting to drive change well?
Schools are a great place too. Start like a gender equality club or joining one if it exists. You could lead workshops, maybe screen a film like The Coward that tackles these issues, and just get discussions going about where stereotypes come from and the harm they do.
And leveraging digital spaces too, right? Social media.
Definitely. Imagine launching a campaign maybe on TikTok or Instagram Reels with a challenge, hashtag the stereotype as shattered, or something where people share short stories about breaking free from gendered expectations. It could be powerful, creating positive counter stories.
For sure, stereotypes influence how we remember and share information. So putting visible positive counter narratives out there is a key to shifting mindsets collectively. And what about policy? Can young people influence that?
Yes, absolutely. Use online platforms like the EU has. So the Have Your Say portal. Through this portal, anyone can participate in online consultations on new or existing EU policies and laws. Other regions have similar things. Draft concrete proposals. Advocate for things like gender-neutral career guidance in schools or reviewing textbooks and materials for representation gaps or biased language. Push for better policies to prevent and address gender-biased violence.
And I would add, connect that to the bigger picture. Schools, workplaces, sports clubs, media, new universities, community groups, every place where people live, work, and learn needs to be a part of this transformation. But yeah, wrapping this all up, that's a big takeaway.
Well, countering gender stereotypes, striving for gender equality is really an act of repairing the social fabric, building stronger bonds, fostering genuine solidarity in our communities, making space for everyone, truly.
And maybe a final thought to leave our listeners with. If these stereotypes limit not only who we are allowed to be individually, but also what we can achieve together as a society, then how might rethinking our everyday interactions, the word we choose, the assumptions we make, the stories we tell, how might that unlock the incredibly diverse potential that exists in all of us? What could we build then? Something to think about. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.